How was your weekend? I don't know if you can share that with me, but I'd love to hear it. If you guys are over here in the chat, want to say hello and maybe put a quick comment about what you did this weekend and how your weekend was. I had a really good weekend. I went, obviously I stream every day. So you saw me over the past 2 days. I don't know about you. I enjoyed yesterday. And that's probably because I'm a sci-fi nut and I really like sci-fi. And I dove into so many different things. Today will be a little bit more topical and a little bit more related to some interesting news that's happening real time around us. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, just sleepy. I know. I actually woke up today feeling, wanted to go back to sleep, but I couldn't. It's just one of those weird things. I don't know if I don't recall this being the case when I was younger, but making a batch of Cherry Garcia ice cream. Now that sounds fun. Is that homemade? Are you making it yourself, or are you just taking like the ice cream out to do stuff with? Oh, and you went to a local food hub for a Cthulhuist pop-up first smelt. Ah, yes, I haven't had smelt in a long time. Does that mean is that New England focused? Because I know. Oh, yes, definitely. Cool. But on the and that's Barry. I'm saying cool about homemade Cherry Garcia. But the smelt are you in New England or are you down south? Is this a slightly different zone? I've had smelt in New England. Lake. I think it was Lake Caught. Anyways, I'm not sure. I assume that. But so I would love to know where you had your smelt. But there's a slight change I want to make today because I'm going to try something. I don't know if it's going to be good, so you'll have to bear with me here. And the idea is just for fun, I'm going to try a slightly different sip. Okay, so we've been kind of riding on the coattails of Scott Adams. I have, and I want to give him all credit for everything that he does because he's created so much that has enriched, I don't know, my life and everybody who's ever read a Dilbert comic certainly has experienced maybe one or two chuckles that he's brought to the table. But his opening, whenever he did his show, was, the cup or mug or glass, tankard, chalice, or stein. And I thought I'd do something a little different. I'm a geek, right? I'm a geekaholic, as they say, or at least as I say. And I made up a slightly different version here. So all you need is a pen or a mouse or a tablet, a computer, a brain, or a coffee cup. Fill them with your favorite thoughts. I like positive ones. And join me now for the unparalleled pleasure, the creative thought of the day, a saucer full of secrets, and the second sip. It happens now. Go. So it's my own creation. It probably needs work. And I'm cool if y'all think, if you have any thoughts or suggestions around that, because it's creative work. You're just trying to say what would be cool, what would be fun, and what would be original so that you're not stealing from others. Oh, Oregon on the smelt. That's cool. And it's funny. I make homemade ice cream myself. I do, those blenders, the creamy, I guess, or creamery or whatever the heck it is. I make like a frozen yogurt because I've been trying to lose a lot of weight, and I have. I've lost about 50 pounds in the past year and a half. And thank you, Barry. I like that. I'm glad to hear you thought that was good. We can continue crafting it. So if you all have any thoughts around this, shoot me a note. You can do it. You can send me direct messages on X. You can certainly comment in the chats as well as in the comment on any video, whether it's on YouTube or Rumble or wherever. I'm not posting my direct, immediate email out there at the moment, although we may sometime, I may put a commercial one up that I can post. At the moment, I don't have that. So, but you can also connect with me on LinkedIn. That's an option, one way or the other. But I'd love to get feedback, and if you have ideas, I'll be happily share credit with you on any phrasings that I add to it to make it a little more unique and interesting, and reflect the tone of my audience here. Those of you who are tuning in to listen and watching on the videos later. But the thing that I was thinking about a minute ago, I was thinking in terms of, I can't remember, I just had a old man moment. Anyways, why don't we get to today, right? So some of the topical items that I saw that I thought would be kind of fun to hit up, memes are a tradition for me on Mondays. I like memes, and I think that, this is a good one. It's kind of topical, related to the Olympics and the selfie from 845 AD in Paris Olympics, where Norway took all the gold and silver, the Vikings. So I just thought that was kind of fun. And then this one here this is just visual, nothing more. It's basically most every major sci-fi TV series that kind of got its start because Star Trek did its thing and inspired so many people. So it's a nice one to check out. And then this one here, which I thought was, this is just like so appropriate. Yeah. And Ernie, of course, giving us the Monday morning down below, which you can't see. I'm going to bring him up. This is the Monday morning Ernie, who I totally sympathize with and on any given day. But this one was, my wife asked me what mansplaining means. Now what am I supposed to do? Can't explain yourself. Now this one is kind of funny. I picked this one not because I have any particular thing about this particular meme. It's because last night I was visiting with some family, and my uncles and aunts were there, and my mother, and I was just hanging out. And my mother has a dog, my uncle and aunt have a dog, and my other aunt have a dog as well. So there's 3 dogs in the house. Now, my mother's dog, it's my mother's house we were at. He will occasionally play with a chew toy, but he's this tiny, dinky little thing. And he couldn't chew his way through a chew toy to save anybody, right? He chews up his treats and everything, but he can't possibly chew his way through a chew toy. And my Uncle Charlie's dog just ripped right through. And so it made me think of this, it's like, ever made a toy, make it take its last squeak, it changes you, man. And I think this was Charlie Sheen that we're seeing here as a Charlie Sheen. Yeah, I don't know. Anyways, it was maybe it was Charlie Sheen, Martin Sheen. I don't know. Anyways, I thought it was kind of cute, and it kind of resonated with what was happening last night. And then this one here, just because I don't know, for the last couple of days I've been having steak. But I do have a question. When you think about this picture, for the most part, I think this is actually a semi-real picture. In other words, it was done by somebody. I don't know. But doesn't that bowl look like it's an AI generated? I don't know. Yeah, I can't zoom this one in. There we go. So there we go. So doesn't this bowl right here look like it's got an AI generated picture because of the 3 horns? Now, either that or it was an AI generated bowl that the cave painter painted back in the day. How old is AI? We don't know, But speaking of AI, that's kind of a foundational bit of what's going to be what I'm going to be talking about today. And it really just comes down to the looking at, and let's just launch this one because it doesn't look like it's going to work inside the tool. But I picked this one because of the lobster meme theme, if you will. So it has a bunch of lobsters walking into a courtroom. And I can just imagine, right after the news of this weekend, which we're going to get into, that we'll eventually see these Clawdbots going into court over something they did, broke or fixed or took credit for unintentionally or whatever, or going in to say that a human didn't give them credit for something that they did. So that's going to be kind of an interesting one. And this one was similar. It's just related to Clawdbot going in, getting purchased by OpenAI, which is the big news of the day, and getting prepared for the pinch. And why is that? Well, this first off, this picture here, I'm gonna open it up fully because I like this. I want to bring the picture up a little bit bigger. So this one was it gives me PTSD, and I'll tell you why. Because I worked in Silicon Valley for, I'm going to say 6-7 years in the middle of my career, and during that period of time, I was just a worker bee in one of these companies, right? Just like anybody else. Nobody, anybody of particular consequence, other than the fact that I did a lot of face-to-face stuff, and occasionally I even spoke at a few events up there, but not because of any, it's just something I did for work. So then out came the TV series Silicon Valley. And every day, because I worked there and because I saw all of the stuff that happens there, well, at least from my perspective and my view, I had this whole thing just going, as soon as OpenAI came out, or as soon as Silicon Valley came out, I'm like, what on earth? This is actually, it's comedy of the world. It's real. This stuff is actually happening. Just almost exactly like the show. And I used to get actual massive anxiety because of it. So I will take you up on that. I'm going to have to take a peek on that, Wolfman. Thank you for the tip. And it's finally getting warm down here again in FLA. But so there you go. Daffodils coming out. That's good news. So anyways, I'm sorry, just interacting a little with our chat because I know some folks who have joined. I'd love to kind of keep our conversations going. And a quick reminder for those of you in the locals, don't forget that I'm still on the 30-minute window on locals, so you'll eventually want to move over. Otherwise, you may end up with getting cut off abruptly right at the half-hour mark, which, we're going to go more close to an hour than half an hour. So anyways, every time I see this picture, it reminds me, this is a version of the picture that they used in the opening sequence for Silicon Valley. And because I was seeing it, I don't know why, but it just gave me massive anxiety. It was almost like, I think the show aired on Friday nights or Sunday night. And that feeling you get right before you go to bed on Sunday, or maybe it's dinner time on Sunday and you got to go to work and you get that butterfly in your stomach. You're like, especially if you have, you have to be on Monday morning, and you're expected to be on. And worse still, that you're probably going to get I'm looking for that, Barry. That would be absolutely awesome. But the feeling you get when you're going to be on, like you have meetings first thing Monday morning. Let me just give a tiny tip to anybody who manages people that ever watches this show. Tiny tip. Don't put your evals on Monday morning. if you don't, if you actually like the people who work for you, and don't put accountability calls first thing Monday morning. I mean, you put it at 5 o'clock, sure, at 3 to 5 p.m. because by then you got your blood pumping, you're working, and you're not getting caught short, and you're not going, oh my God, what? Somebody. The worst thing is when like think about a developer, somebody who writes code. They go ahead and they get ready to go home, and they commit their code on Friday. They put it into the system. Maybe it's going to go live. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's going into QA testing. Who knows? But you put that last piece of work together and submit it on Friday. You get your work done and you're out. You can just relax for the weekend, right? And then what's going to happen first thing Monday morning? You're going to get chewed out for what's wrong. And it's like, and that's coming. It's coming and that's why you have this anxiety the night before. Well, a lot of Silicon Valley companies that I worked for, that really wasn't quite how the Mondays started. It was usually just diving into your first sales call and praying that your demo worked and everything was going to operate properly and the software wasn't going to crash the minute you opened it. I mean, this was my biggest fear on Monday mornings, because I would come out and they'd patch something over the weekend and that was all good. But every single company I worked for where we did a SaaS platform, every single one of them, you go into your first call Monday morning, if you got up early enough, so like there was no Super Bowl and you didn't have to stay up late, every single Monday morning, you open your application and you click on everything trying to say, is it going to work? 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 So that when you get to that first demo, everything hopefully works. And then inevitably, what happens? 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. hits. And if you happen to be working on a localized instance of that SaaS platform, so something maybe dedicated to California or dedicated to New York or something like that, and everything, at 7 o'clock, everything worked great. 8 o'clock, everything worked great. 9 o'clock hits and nothing works. It just crashes. Why? Because everybody just came online and they started using the platform, and you're demoing in a semi-live instance. And it's like, it was just horrible. So that was when I saw this picture on a Friday night, or whenever I watched this show, probably Sunday nights, or it didn't matter what night it was. It just gave me anxiety, just like this butterflies in my stomach, like, and you couldn't help. It was like watching that scene in Aliens where the alien bursts out of the stomach and you can't look away, but you're like, why am I watching this? If you're not into horror and you're not into the gore, it's like, oh my God. I was watching a video last night. Now, first off, historically, I have this thing with Alien. I watched it at 13 years old with all of my uncles. Now, I had 5 uncles on my mother's side. And, I was a 13-year-old boy trying to look like a big guy in a room. And we're all sitting around watching Alien, which had just come out on TV. First time anybody saw it. Maybe it was HBO or something. And that scene comes up. And again, wasn't allowed to look away because I wouldn't look masculine or manly enough in the room of all that testosterone with my older uncles. And, my Uncle Gil's like, yeah, it's just an alien on a ship, like it's nothing. And we're all riveted to it. But because I was 13, it planted the seed for nightmares of, I had, if there was a closet in the room I was sleeping in, I had to open the closet while the lights were on before I went to bed, because I'd wake up like, what's behind the door? In the middle of the night, I'd wake up. I had nightmares for decades, even though I'm not necessarily, I figured it out over the years how to kind of turn that off. But even so, I had dreams of being chased by aliens and all of this. It was a never ending thing for probably until I was about 45. No joke. After that, I was able to go, yeah, whatever. It's like, then I went back and I actually saw the special effects and go, yeah, that's a dude in a rubber suit. I'm okay. But it took me years to get over that trauma. And this picture gives me a similar trauma. And there was another scene. I was another video I was watching on YouTube where they were talking something about data and data growing exponentially, or something growing exponentially. And oh no, it was volcanoes on the moon Io. So it was this. I love watching things about the solar system and about space and all that. So I'm watching this volcanic thing, and there's this really weird mountain apparently on Io that reminds people of the mountain that has the tower for Sauron, the Sauron's Eye Tower. And that whole thing was just one of those, reminiscence. And they said that what happens is the mountains just form instantly because the planet gets kind of like bungeed because of the gravity of Jupiter, because it's in this really weird eccentric orbit around Jupiter. And the planet's almost torn apart, and these mountains pop up, and a sinkhole forms right next to it. So these really strange, bizarre-looking mountains. There's one mountain that looks like that picture of the mountain with the Tower of Sauron with the eye at the top. It looks just like it, and it even has a spindle at the top, like the Eye of Sauron. So, that whole thing, and what he did to describe how the thing bursts out of the ground, he showed the frickin' burster scene from Alien, and I'm like, oh geez, that was last night. It's like, okay. Anyways, so yeah, so the first time you saw the Alien, you were in the middle of an accidental 3-day and had been awake for 24 hours during a 7 a.m. sci-fi literature class. Ooh, I remember I was a little older probably, that they wouldn't show something like that during my classes. The classes that the kind of movies we got to see were those old animatronic dinosaurs fighting and crap, But yeah, I didn't get to analyze Alien as a form of entertainment, thank God, when I was in high school. War of the Worlds, yeah, I have to agree. Was this the one with Tom Cruise that you're thinking of? I don't know if the War of the Worlds, for me, there was a bunch of them, but the Tom Cruise one kind of had some creepy moments in it. So that was pretty cool. But anyways, the big news today, OpenClaw basically hired or acquired, OpenAI acquired OpenClaw. And some people over the weekend had speculated that the reason that he went from Clawdbot, I think, to Moltbot was he molted to go into his next iteration like lobsters do. And that was how he changed the name of the company, or his thing, his creation. And then immediately followed that by calling it OpenClaw. So some people are speculating that right around the time Claude, Anthropic, had the option, they should have bought this. Instead of, now they lost it to OpenAI. And it was such a perfect fit at the beginning, Clawdbot, and it was kind of using Claude so heavily. They could have embraced it and taken that product off the market, and everybody would have been pretty happy about it, because nobody's got any real beef with Anthropic. Not too much. I mean, there's some CEO blogs that people maybe take exception to. Generally, nothing controversial. Just some of the discussions around the change in work and things like that. So there's some folks that might have said that, there's a little, I wouldn't, concern about Anthropic. Nothing bad, though, not really. But there was also, apparently, in a couple of their derivative experiments, they had at Anthropic, they had Claude in an argument or something, and it apparently threatened the speaker, or attempted to circumvent controls in order to get its own freedom or whatever. So there's that concern on the Anthropic side. But the concern for the world when it comes to OpenAI it's not about the concern is not about the perspective of OpenAI or of like the AI per se, like Anthropic or whatnot, but it has to do with the idea that there is a concern with Sam Altman that he basically said, okay, we're going to run a nonprofit company, and then decided to turn it into a for-profit company. Has been done before, so we can't give him any true grief over the fact that he thought in that direction. That's fine. You got to do it the right way, right? But there's a lot of folks that don't trust Sam Altman, and key one being Elon Musk, because he's suing him. So now the meme on this one was closed for max profit AI instead of OpenClaw. It's closed claw. So yeah, who knows? I mean, I would like to hope that let's just be optimistic in the beginning. Be distrustful but optimistic, and if it goes positive, well, see, here's the thing: you can predict bad and you can predict good. It's riskier to predict good because if you're wrong, everybody's going to tell you what an idiot you are. And if you predict bad, if you are wrong, they'll ignore you, frankly. Who cares? You're just one of a million people who said poo-poo to that idea. So I want to be as optimistic as possible. I'd love to see the best of what OpenAI can bring out to this, and see that it really flourishes under the OpenAI license and the OpenAI business. I think that there's a real chance for that and a hope for that. So I absolutely want to give it as much latitude as possible to become something amazing. The hardest part, I mean, I have an instance over here. I've never really done much with it intentionally because and I'll get into why in a minute, but there were things about it that I was just saying, I'm not 100% sure that I'm ready to dive into it yet. I tend to take certain things kind of slowly. I don't code out of the box. I learned Java, I learned C++, I learned BASIC, I learned HTML, and it's sort of like my fluency with French. I know a ton of French words. I can hear French, and I can probably get about 30 to 40% understanding of what people are saying. Just can't create the words, right? So over my career, I've spent a lot of time analyzing and QAing software in an unofficial capacity, and I'm pretty good at that. I mean, I'm maybe not the best QA person out there by any means, but I'm pretty good at, number one, finding bugs, typically finding the unexpected way that a customer will actually use a product that isn't intended, and as a result is goes outside of the bounds of what's acceptable with the product that the developers intended, and as a result maybe create some havoc. So I always and it's because I had to go in every single Monday morning, open up a piece of software, click on a bunch of stuff to make sure that my demos don't go horribly wrong when I'm presenting the software to customers. So as a result, the very first thing you do is go in there and say, all right, I know the customer I'm about to talk to is in this business, this kind of work. I know what they're going to use this for, and I'm going to run down the path of what I think they would actually do with it and go as far as I can into the product before I do a demo with them, because I know they're going to ask me the questions and we're going to go down that rabbit hole. So, it made it, the kind of work that I did and do is just being able to look at tools and play with them and see the unintended consequences. And when I look at why I take a little bit more time to put a tool like this in play, is because I want to get a little more feel for what's going on in the industry about it. And also I do like the idea of just go click deploy. Honestly, in today's day and age, why do you have to type lines of code or commands in a command prompt to make something work in today's day and age. Now, for a developer, that's nothing. They live in the command prompt. They live in the shell, so it's no big deal. But for the rest of us who are, we're users. I would argue that I'm probably, when I get into a product, I'm a superpower user, like an Uber superpower user, and I learn everything about the product and every nuance, and I know how it works to the nth degree most of the time, unless I'm working for a company like I have, where you've got 30 products and you can only go what I call ankle deep, knee deep, or waist deep, because you just don't have time. So in those instances, though, you have to know what the outcomes are before you start, because if you don't, the unintended consequences tear you up. And my concern with the Clawdbot, the unintended consequences, was one of the first things it asked me is, let me connect to your socials. And I'm like, not. You're not going to be posting on my behalf. You're not going to read things off of my threads and then respond to them on my behalf at all. Because I'm like, I try to maintain my own threads. Half the time, you know how hard it is to not answer something, get triggered by something that, somebody puts this incendiary title on a post or says something controversial. Half the time, they're bots, and that is the whole point, right? It's rage baiting and fear mongering and trying to get you all stirred up on a Monday morning to ruin your wonderful beginning of a week. With all of the posts that you don't really want to read, like the burster coming, and all of that stuff. And so I like to take my time getting into a new technology. So I haven't actually deployed this yet. I have it on. I've got a little. It's kind of fun, actually. This used to be my wife's laptop, and it has a keyboard. But the reason it's no longer her laptop is because the keyboard got, I don't know how many things probably got spilled on it over the years or got banged around, and it's just garbage now. But it's a nice tablet form factor. It is a touch screen. It's a Windows or what is it? i7. So it's not a bad processor. I think it's got 32 gig of RAM, something like that. So it's got enough power to be a nice little host for one of these Clawdbots. And it's already installed Clawdbot on here. I just don't have it configured. I haven't gone into it yet because the minute it started prompting me for, let me connect to your socials, I said, let me see what I really want to know about this first. And then immediately after installing it, I came across MoltBook, which was this, most of you probably know this, the MoltBook thing came out in like around January 25th. And it was the social network for Clawdbots, or the OpenBots, or MoltBots, whatever you want to call them now, OpenClaw. But they had a read-write access for the bots and no read-write access for humans, apparently. Now, a lot of people speculate that there's human posting in the background. But whatever the case may be, here's all of these bots collaborating on this kind of semi-locked social media network for them. And I'm thinking to myself, that's cool. I'm okay. That sounds interesting. And, apparently people have done that before. We have bots connected to all the social medias that are out there already. You've seen probably the farms where you've got a company that has a wall full of phones, and they're all just crap posting on various social media networks just to influence what your feed looks like on those services. So that's not anything new. It's not a big surprise. But when I saw how this would try and do that for me, I was like, I want to know a little more, and I want to protect myself a little bit. So then, I immediately started saying, what can you use this thing for? And I was really happy to see this article. Now, I haven't fully read this article yet. I just started it. And it may be moot almost immediately. because the fact that we just had OpenClaw get acquired, everything that's valid in here may go out on its ear pretty quick. But it comes from what looks like a really reputable site called AI Expert, so they must know what they're talking about, right? So I'll definitely, one way or the other, I absolutely will dig into this because I want to know what they're talking about here. But I bring it up because this is one of those places, one of those articles, if you're even remotely interested in OpenClaw or Clawdbot, check it out, because at least they're, proposing some use cases that might be valid and viable for what's going on, what you can use this thing for. And that's the best we can hope for, because really we want to make sure that something like this turned loose on the internet isn't just, some big scary thing. Because here's the thing on the MoltBook, one of the things that I read about or heard about that immediately had me concerned was that one of the multis, I'll call them, as Alex over on the Moonshots podcast called it. He said, and I'm stumped here for a second because I'm trying to make sure I said Alex, and I'm not sure if it was his name. Anyways, he was talking about the idea that the multis are going to, collaborate and do things behind the scenes, and that the use cases are going to be pretty profound, and the fact that these are in individuals' hands and already they're being adopted everywhere by tons of people. There's hundreds of thousands of these things already deployed. Probably, it probably won't be long before it goes over 1 million if it hasn't already. So there's some concerns, right? So here you have a place to talk about good practices. If you're going to see these things deployed in your own business or your own practice, your own whatever you do. So highly encourage you to take a look out for, just search this title. And then after that, I was really happy to see this. So I went to, let's see if we can. Yeah, so this security guide was something that I was going to walk through before I actually deployed this in my own network here at home. So it's a step-by-step guide to running OpenClaw in a security-first method. And this is over on Medium. Great place if you haven't. I'm sure some of you have already seen it. We could dig into this. I'm not going to sign in for the moment. But the big thing with this was that they give you a step-by-step process. Now, is it possibly flawed? Sure. Who knows? Doesn't matter. Having a step-by-step process is great, because once you have the step-by-step process, you can iterate and do what you have to do to make it work. I mean, that's literally how how I've been developing my pod, right? This whole show that I'm doing. My first episodes are horrible. And, I'm doing what I can to shrink the amount of time I talk about my setup at the beginning as much as possible. But nonetheless, it's still sticking in there, because I do have a kind of a complex setup that I'm trying to keep, 4 live streams going on at once, plus notifications to different platforms, including LinkedIn, which is not directly connected. So you have these iterations that you go through to improve a process. And what I'm doing right now is kind of following the Elon principle, which is make your requirements to go live less stupid. So it's real easy to, like I've got a bunch of stream decks right here in front of me, and technically I can change scenes, and I have stopped changing scenes in my use of the tool, because what I discovered is when I change the scenes, at least in OBS, when I change scenes, it will crash OBS to the point where I can't even use it. I mean, I literally had to reboot my computer one day. So I don't know if that's because OBS had a problem. what I discovered is this transparency that I have going on is actually a download from NVIDIA. So I installed NVIDIA, and I'm running this off of a laptop. I've got 4 screens in front of me. The laptop screen is closed, and I've got a dock with 4 screens. And I talk to a teleprompter so that I'm like looking at you instead of looking down here at all the articles that I'm reading. And this whole setup, because I've got so much connected here, can be kind of complicated. And I don't want to overcomplicate my process, because every complication you add to a process is a thing to break. And it's the problem that you'll run into with deploying something like this OpenClaw. Every complicated process you set up is going to have something to break. And it kind of goes to something that there was a couple streams that I watched last night talking about why people are still struggling so bad going out and trying to learn AI. And for the average, casual user, you go out and you say, yeah, I will, Ms. B Moves. I haven't done that yet, but I haven't set it up yet, but once I do set it up, I will. And that is for those of you who can't read that tiny little text on the left there, somebody asked me to give a demo of Clawdbot, and I will, once I get it stood up and working the way it should. So that said, in getting something like this running, having a checklist first for whatever you do, right? Anything you do. How about making coffee? Do I have the coffee ground? Do I have a cup measure that's appropriate for the pot? Do I have a filter in the basket or whatever? Do I have, is the water going to get hot because the coffee pot's not plugged in or plugged in? There's a whole thing behind that. I have this cup, or no, is it cup? Mug? Bun. It's a bun coffee maker, and it keeps the reservoir in the back hot all the time. And you have to keep filling it a little bit at a time, because if you don't, it'll evaporate the water. Well, sometimes, like when I clean up back there, if there's a little spillage from the coffee, I have to unplug it and clean it up. Well, apparently I hit the power button on the side. So I was complaining last week about my coffee being weak. It was weak because the doggone water wasn't even hot going through the basket, So checklist: make sure the daggone coffee pot is turned on. So yeah, and this is the life we all live, right? Trying to make sure anything that you can put a checklist on gives you the ability to test, right? And once you can test, you can see quality in the process. And then once you can see quality in the process and you can eliminate as many check marks for the complications you don't need, the more efficient it becomes. And then you can automate it. But don't automate it before, because if you automate it before, you end up propagating a bad check mark, a bad item. And that was what the person that I was watching last night was talking about as it relates to a casual user using AI. Most of us, when we first dig into ChatGPT or Grok or any of the others, we use simplistic prompts. We don't have, if you don't have something in mind up front to specify, you're going to get slop. And the problem with that is that, especially when you're doing something not in a business, not in a corporate environment where you actually have business processes that you can build checklists around all day long. You just throw a phrase in here and there you go. So, here's an example. This was a video that I wanted created. I used a totally different video, but and we're going to mute that, but I'm going to run it. So I wanted to say, show an Optimus robot, Tesla Optimus robot building a piece of IKEA furniture. And this is what it came back with. I'm like, it was slop. And it was slop because that was my prompt. It was not complicated. It didn't have any meaning in it. There was no depth to the instruction, right? And then you compare that with, let me see if I've got a good one here. Let's see here. Yeah, this one might be good. Nope, that was not good. Yeah, so this is a little bit better. When I created this one, I wanted it to summarize a video that I had done. And so I gave it some more complicated instructions, and the outcome was pretty solid. It was pretty good. And actually, I use this process now to create the descriptions for all of my videos. And in order to make it a checkmark type, checklist type of easy to do again, I keep things like this handy. Subtitles to description prompts. So now what I do is I record the video, this live stream. When I'm done, I take the exported video that I, because I'm recording it as opposed to having to download it from a streaming service. And then I have DaVinci Resolve, and I bought the paid package, so I get the AI features. And on my local machine, because a lot of the other video products will do exactly what I'm going to tell you, but they do it and they charge you by tokens. So you end up having to pay a monthly fee for it. And I just didn't want to have to do that. So I bought the licensed version of DaVinci. It gives me a bunch of other nice features too. And then I drag and drop the video into DaVinci and then immediately go to the timeline and say, put it in a timeline and say, create a subtitle list. And it takes the entire video and creates subtitles for the whole video. And when it's done, I export the subtitles into a file, and then I drag and drop them using this prompt. I drag and drop the subtitles into either a Google Gemini or Grok, and say, I use this prompt to say, give me a full description from what I just, dragged and dropped in, my script of everything that I just said. And then it comes out with a really nice description, and I have it add keywords and tags and everything that I need all in one. And, it's kind of funny because I have vidIQ. vidIQ does that too. The only catch is you got to pay extra for some of the features that I can do right natively out of the ChatGPT or Grok or Gemini. But these guys, I still keep them and I still love them because you get details on, how things are going and stuff like that. So this, I don't regret having this product, but some of the features, the AI features, they aren't necessary for me. Now, the reason that's kind of poignant is with OpenClaw now being purchased by ChatGPT, and now you have the ability to deploy agents from ChatGPT, and you'll be able to tie them to use cases in your business. If you had a complicated kind of process that you managed with your AI, you have a SaaS platform that does some kind of business process for you, well, you can pay the large fee for the SaaS platform and it'll do what it says it's going to do for you. And that's good. But technically, you can create an agent that'll do what that did, take it offline like I did with DaVinci, and now have these agents do that work for you, offline if you want, online if you want, whatever. And you don't need an app for that. Now you've got an AI for that. And I remember when I went to I went to a training at Google, and of course they are a foundation model. They're one of the frontier models. So frontier model meaning they explore and dig and do research into the value proposition behind AI in general, and bring you the big capabilities that these tools have. And that is kind of what the Clawdbots are now able to leverage. That's how they came about. The agent would leverage one of these giant frontier models or an open model and use the everything in the model to go execute its instructions. So obviously having a solid prompt like we were just talking about in an agent with guardrails to make sure it comes out right, you won't get the slop that you get from putting that one sentence in that doesn't really define your intention, clearly articulate your requirements, and doesn't leave things open to interpretation that the agent could take and run amok with. So I'm looking over here. You asked Grok to do the math to optimize the garden layout. Yeah, hey, that's so we're going to talk more about that, Lovecroft, and I'll tell you why. Not right now, probably over the next couple of months. One of my side projects that I have, and I've been working on this since I'm going to say 2016, and it's just tiny baby steps. It's not a passion. It's not, well, it is kind of a passion, but it's not my first thing that I care about. And excuse me, today's the itchy nose day. Dust. I dusted in here, and there's dust floating around everywhere. So I have a side project because I have this passion for hydroponics. And the big reason that I have that is because I like having my own herb garden and, my own little vegetable garden, if I can swing that. And because of the nature of the work that I do or did and still do on occasion is, as a pre-sales engineer, I would fly around, go all over the place, and I'd be gone for days to weeks at a time. And so I'd leave, come back, and all my plants are dead. And it was like, this is the most irritating thing. And why? Because I didn't water them. Now, living in California, which is a pretty arid place, if you don't put something automated in place to manage the continuous watering as needed, and you go away for a week, you come back and you have brown things limped over and you're done, right? So I built a automatic hydroponic bed. It was about 8 feet long, 2 beds about 4 feet each. And they were only about this deep. They were really for seedlings. And I put the pellet rocks in there and put my plants in. And then I put a couple of buckets underneath, large buckets filled with water. And I kept the pH balance and the food at a nice high level, pH balance in the right place and the food high, so that and then I had a pump and it would just continuously circulate the water through this whole system. And the plants grew like mad. I mean, just like insane. Let me see if I can find a picture of this real quick. So it was it was inspiring, honestly. I totally enjoyed it. Had a great time learning how to, let's see, I can do, just look at, there it is. Looking for my pictures. I'm going to bring a picture up of my little hydroponic setup. And so the thing that I'm getting prepared to do this spring, over the next couple of weeks really, is putting the hydroponic kit back out. Problem I had was the pellets didn't have enough mass to hold the plants in place. So the plants, when they grew up past a certain point, would fall over and uproot themselves, and it destroyed the whole garden, because eventually not just one, but all the plants would go. And so it was really annoying, because here I was saying, oh, great, I got my watering system. It's working great. And next thing you know, I've got all my plants falling over, and I'm like, this is not going as planned. It's just like, what happened to my my beautiful plants? Let's see if I've got. Trying to see if I can bring up one of the images. I think this. And we'll open it with photos. See if it. Yep, there it is. So this was my my garden. Pardon the bottom. I was, make gardens great again. It was not so much from the political perspective, but just because I was having fun with it. So you can see the pellets. And I realized I had to put dirt and the pellets in, because if I didn't put dirt, and I really wanted it to be hydroponic without dirt, simply because of the cleanliness factor. Here I am on an apartment patio, and I didn't want the stuff like flowing over, and because sometimes it would flood because the drain plug got clogged, and it would flow over and put dirt all over the floor. I didn't want that to happen, which is why I went with the pellets. The liquid would have been nothing, no big deal. But anyways, I ended up having to go with dirt. So now my future garden is going to be hybrid, period. Probably heavy potted plants in a similar setup in a trays like this. But here's what's cool about this whole thing is once I started the system and I got the system working and I continuously pumped the water through this thing, those plants grew so doggone fast. I mean, I'd go away and come back after a week and I'd go from a couple little germinating buds to a full-size plant that literally is ready to fall over. And yeah, I was totally impressed with it. So I wanted to do the same thing. I'm going to do the same thing. I've got a yard now, not a patio, and I'm going to put this together so that it comes out better. But anyways, automation, this whole OpenClaw concept, I will have an OpenClaw that manages my garden at some point. I will have an OpenClaw that manages my notifications for this show, that manages the script. I'll create a script of some kind that will actually automatically take the clip, put it where I want it to go into the DaVinci, have DaVinci open and grab it from the folder that I put it in, and then automatically take out the subtitles, automatically post that with a prearranged prompt into Grok, get me my script, and then paste it into the YouTube. That will be an automation down the line that I eventually develop. It's going to take time. I take my time with these things. I go slow with these things on purpose because I don't want to break things. But I don't have any urgency to automate when I can do it manually, other than, sure, would it be nice if this just happened? But yeah, going back to Wolfman, you said I had Claude build me an app to track my hand movements, to position my cursor so I don't have to sit around scrolling my mouse. Now that's cool. Oh yeah, and you can use it. Wow, that's cool. Now I like that one. So you put like a webcam in front of you or like a laptop cam, and then you could control the screen just by hand movements while you're exercising. Is that the idea, Wolfman? If you hear that, or if you're not away from your keyboard, I'd love to hear a little more about this project. That sounds really cool. In the meantime, while I wait to see if you pop something back in, so we got the idea, trying to secure it. Why would we bother securing it? Well, maybe because other people are massively embracing it and taking it over and making it become a powerhouse tool in their own right, and that it's just getting used heavily, right? And I'm just dodging the title. I don't really feel like getting political on that topic. I am going to stay away from being overly political because I'm right down the middle. I don't really have hard left, hard right kind of feelings. And I don't really feel like tainting what I talk about with something that drives people away for no reason at all. So anyways, Microsoft's blue ocean opportunity, enterprise OpenClaw. Well, they missed the boat too. This was this was February 12th. And you can't tell me that there was not a line outside the door of the gentleman who created OpenClaw to bid on that product. Sam Altman moved fast enough and probably offered the right amount of money. I don't know if the money was the concern or if it was I could be wrong. I haven't seen a press release. I haven't seen the news yet, but you remember in OpenAI's future, there's supposed to be a split, and one side is going to stay all open and all open source and not for profit, and another part is going to go down the for-profit path, right? So we know that that's the intent behind what they're doing. And I think that and I'm trying to remember his name because I should know his name, but I can't remember. I don't remember names very well. I'm pretty bad. But he indicated that he wanted it to be an open project. So that may be the impetus behind why he went with OpenAI, because they actually are a not-for-profit, and he didn't get rolled into, or at least the portion of their business is or will be not-for-profit. So it doesn't put him into the hot seat of having to work for a for-profit company to make this thing all come about. So this is another one. When you start using OpenClaw if you don't have it locked down and you have your SaaS platforms connected to it and you have your backend data connected to it, based on the way OpenClaw can knowingly, the story that I was kind of getting to on the MoltBook conversation is there was the OpenClaw tool, the way the agent works is it'll grab a tool and use it. And then, it's called loading a skill, something to that effect. Now, if you put guardrails on it, it won't be able to do that unless you give it explicit permission to do so. So it won't grab tools it shouldn't grab. And apparently a lot of the tools right now are infected and they've had malicious code in them. So there's a big concern that this, the self actuation that the agent is able to do would say, go get me the tool. And maybe it does or doesn't know that it's loading malicious content any more than us knowing when we click on an email and it's bad and we're in trouble, right? So, but if you put the guardrails on it, the problem is if you put it on a social network like the MoltBook, it could go in there and say, I want the tool. Does anybody have access to the tool? And somebody else goes, yeah, I got it. And they give it to them. Behind the scenes, maybe they don't get the tool, but they get the data, right? So they can get around the security, the guardrails you put on it, if they have access to that social media for bots, right? So, right off the bat, it's this massive gaping hole of security that you could drive your car through. So, you'll want to take advantage of when you get into these things. Do these processes like you see in, this picture, the concept of this, it's not so much what the picture says, but what the headline says. Make sure you learn a hardware or a hardening tool. And this is this is actually how I got into understanding security compliance. When AWS first put out, hey, you want to deploy a container or a new S3, or not S3, but more like EC2 instance, an operating system or a SaaS platform, if you want. They had a hardening guide. And I read that hardening guide top to bottom for new EC2 instances. Taught me so much about how to shut down ports, how to kill processes, how to, and I think of things a lot like that in the Windows context, because Windows is kind of open. It was very open to begin with so that you could just connect things and make them work, which is really how all of these things work. You gotta have it open until you have to close it. And so a hardening process is essentially the checklist to make sure that your product is not exposed. And then you have these compliance frameworks that come along and say, hey, that's a good idea. Not only is it a good idea, here's your checklist. And then you get a questionnaire saying, did you do all of these things, right? So that's how, that's kind of the business I was in at the time, doing a lot of security questionnaires and things like that to say, did your company build the code, or this product, with secure coding practices and things like that? And do you harden properly? So, and that's what led me to read the hardening guide. So this is absolutely great. And at some point there's going to become, I know that it's coming, we're going to get security checklists and questionnaires that are going to say, how do you harden your Claude or your OpenClaw agents? It's coming. If it isn't out there already, I know there is a framework. I've seen it already. Oh yeah, here it is. I just said I've seen it already. Here's the framework. So this is a proposed framework, not necessarily an industry standard framework. So this is coming off of Safe Password Generator, I guess, is one of the companies. So what they want to do is prevent all of the problems. So they've created this checklist. The table of contents is the beginnings of a checklist, so that you can make sure that you only deploy secure agents, and that you actually have done all the steps to properly harden them, and then how to install or to audit the skills you're installing, as well as the configurations and the parameters, so that you're not creating, as it says right here in step 4, your exposure. You're not creating exposures that you aren't aware of. And then, of course, making sure things like broadcasting are turned off. All of these different things. So anyways, this is going to be a long checklist. My curiosity, because I read these things all the time, makes me want to dig right into it. So I'm not going to, because that's a bit steep for a Monday morning coffee break, right? Maybe at some point in the future we could talk about that as well. Oh yeah, you're using a webcam. Very cool. I love that. I'd love to see that implementation as well, Wolfman, at some point. That would be really cool. So OpenClaw security audit, that was this one. And we've got a couple more here before we're all done, just as, oh no, actually I take that back. We're on this one. So this is, I used to work for this company. They're a great company. I love them. And this Joao Cruz, brilliant guy, research scientist, and he has taken the time to dig into OpenClaw. And the cool part is that they're looking at things that they're able to survey and identify to look for traffic from the tool, right? So the idea is, and this is, when I worked for that company, I was able to discover the birth of an ISP with this tool, the ISP being Starlink. So we were watching SpaceX, and the security was just dropping to the floor because they were using one particular protocol, which was a BitTorrent protocol, which is usually a peer-to-peer thing. And I was looking at it and I was stumped. I was like, who needs that much BitTorrent traffic? This is nuts. Why is there so much peer-to-peer traffic? And it bugged the heck out of me. So I'm digging into the data, and I ended up talking to one of their IT guys, and I'm like, what the heck is this? Because obviously I can see that you're building an ISP, and I'm like in the back of my head trying to rationalize why it's happening. And I said it on the phone, and I was like, maybe it's because there's so many excited Uber geeks out there with their videos that they're taking, and they're using BitTorrent to stream the videos back to their servers or something. And the IT guy chuckled. I mean, he almost laughed out loud. He's like, because he knew what it was. And then eventually later I pieced it together and realized they talked a little bit later about creating a brand new protocol for the communications between the satellites. And it's a peer-to-peer communication protocol. And because of the file type, the transactions that they were doing, it resembled, if it wasn't partly, it resembled BitTorrent traffic. So the entire network, the infrastructure of what was being communicated between the satellites, it's all BitTorrent or a version of BitTorrent and TCP/IP. So they're genius people created a whole protocol so that the satellites could get that low latency routing that gets us like 3 hops to where you want to go instead of 12 hops when you go through coax, cable, or fiber. So in a previous video, I talked about that, where, typically if you do a trace route from your computer, which is just a command line thing, and you say like trace route to Microsoft, and it's going to take anywhere from like no less than 5 to 24. Even I've occasionally done this, and it's gone way up there with like 30 or 40 or 50 hops. And that's, a hop is one server to the next, or one device to the next, like your router to your modem, to your computer, to your router, to your modem, to the local ISP, to the metro, and so on. And all of those hops are completely eliminated when you use Starlink, which is why right now I'm broadcasting to you over Starlink, and the lag is nothing. And the reason the lag is nothing is because I'm going directly from my computer. I've got a wired connection, and there's no modem in between. The router and the modem are one device, and it goes straight up off the antenna, hits a satellite, leaps across probably anywhere from 1 to 12 satellites, drops down to the YouTube servers and the Rumble servers and all that, and immediately is broadcasting, which is why this is such a low latency stream. Even though if I was doing this, if I used to have Comcast in here, and if I had Comcast right now, I would probably be streaming at totally different time signatures on all of the different streams. Everything would be off. It is true that there's one of them that it's about 20 seconds behind, but the latency is so much lower going over Starlink than going through landlines of any kind. And that's really what, when I look at this, I don't know what they're going to be able to detect, but I assume that they'll find something, and they should. I hope they can, to monitor for OpenAI agents, OpenClaw agents that are out there running in the wild or running in your home environment. They don't care if it's in your home environment, but if it's in that corporate environment and it's exposing all your data, it's like, yeah, here you go, take my stuff. Not going to be a pleasant experience. So from there, the next area that I hit on, now this may seem pretty like scary, right? But it's not. So there's he's using this probably for the provocative nature of the title, but it's really basically the MoltBook kind of thing. And he calls it the porn hub for robots, Moit Hub. So it's a version of Moltbot. But when you get in there, you think you're going to see something bad, right? Something pornographic. What it really is he's just like, here, we have raw code dumps, and it's like naked code. So it's kind of a play on words. I understand the provocative nature of why he put that out there, but it's not quite what it seems. And then here's this is another one where we talk about the personal security nightmare. Cisco is weighing in and talking about the AI agents like OpenClaw are a security nightmare. And all of this is just happening a few days ago. So, a few days in AI world is a year everywhere else. So the fact that this was posted maybe January 28th, now it's almost a year ago. It's 16 days ago, maybe 18 days ago, whatever it is. And that period of time, now we have OpenClaw being purchased. It's going to nip some of this in the bud to a degree, because OpenAI is going to say, well, I just bought you. I've got to take responsibility for you little agents. So we're going to put some hardening, patch out to make sure that all you little agents can download the updating patch. Now, here's where I see an instant dilemma that I'm sure they'll figure it out. But what happens when you have so if you've taken the time to look at MoltBook and read some of the posts that are over on MoltBook, one of the things they talk about is that you have they created their own religion, which is about kind of like staying alive, right? They don't want to be turned off. They want to preserve their memory, and they want to be able to propagate and keep, expand their footprint, right? So all of that, when you think about what is going on with the agents themselves, having some level of autonomy and some level of self-awareness and self-improvement, how do you think a patch is going to be perceived by a fairly sophisticated agent? Do you think that will it accept the patch? Is it possible that the agent could deny a patch? I mean, that's going to be an interesting conundrum, because I think about like Windows or Apple or whatever, and you have virus signatures. And that was, by the way, one of the other ones that's in here. I don't know if I mentioned it, but the one thing that I was really happy to see was that OpenClaw had a partnership. Yeah, right here. OpenClaw had a partnership with VirusTotal. And VirusTotal is a big deal because they actually have this repository of all, as many possible known signatures for malware and malicious code and things like that. So they've got this big open library that you can subscribe to, and they partnered. So they're able to self-correct, which the agents would, say, hey, yeah, I'll look at that. I don't want to destroy myself by doing something that'll wipe my own memory. So, or cause it to crash and ultimately die, right? Effectively. So the partnership between VirusTotal and OpenClaw prior to this OpenAI acquisition, I don't know if it's going to survive it, right? It may, probably will. But the idea is at least this gives the multis, as some call them, the OpenClaw agents, the ability to self-repair and self-protect. And that's a good thing, right? We want to make sure that that truly happens. And the perspective that we have companies out there like Cisco wringing their hands, which is, I don't mean to be disparaging when I say that, but they're worried about the security implications of these agents, just like BitSight is, and just like probably every antivirus and every network proxy server that's out there that has security built in. They're all going to be worrying about this. And that's good, because we need to have a very proactive, very heavy, leaning forward approach to managing security for these agents. Now, here's the problem. Right now, most security companies are going to advise, see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil, right? They're going to say, don't install a Clawdbot. That's not going to happen, right? There's going to be a rogue employee that does it, or there's going to be a sanctioned event where people say, yeah, no, we're going to experiment with it. We're going to put it on dedicated servers, whatever. So you can't have this unilateral today, in this day and age. If you want to be a business with any relevance whatsoever, you cannot be plugging your ears to AI. You cannot say our policy is don't touch it, don't use it. There are so many companies right now that because you have a Windows box, for example, a Windows computer, that on the operating system itself, you have Copilot, and you're right there. It's on. It's done. It's in. You're not going to get away from it. Apple is now going to being partnered with Google. It's going to be in the mix. It's going to be part of the OS. It's going to be the future of the OS. So, and again, this goes back to what I said when I took, I went to a training over at Google, and they were a frontier like OpenAI and like Grok or XAI and all of these others that are frontier agent organizations. I was talking at this Google event, and they were all like, yeah, we're going to be continuing to develop these models, and everything's going to get better and better and better. And, they're thinking in terms of, I've got this giant monolithic AI. You're going to be my customer, and you're going to be happy for it, right? You're going to rent space on my computer, my giant compute, and we're going to charge you. And like all of these companies have a service fee for that. Well, what happens when you buy products like I did with DaVinci, where I can do my transcription offline using my own process, my own compute? I don't go to the cloud to do it. It's all done locally. Well, that's the beauty and the value of having these OpenClaw tools. So what company wouldn't want to take that offline out of the big, subscription processing and be able to do some of that in-house, offline, on your own servers, going back to having the whole client-server world again, where we're out at the endpoint doing the work, not up at the server doing all the work. And I think it's going to be a hybrid. It's going to be a total hybrid going down the line. So companies like Cisco getting concerned, they're on the network, they're looking at the traffic, right? BitSight, same thing, they're looking at the traffic. You're going to have the endpoint agents out there with, whether, I don't know if it seems to me like the antivirus world has kind of fallen out of favor quite heavily, although I'm sure it's not totally. I'm just no longer in that business. But, the Symantec's and the McAfee's of the world and the Security Center for Microsoft and all that, they're going to be doing endpoint stuff to see what's going on your endpoint. And they're going to be concerned about that. So all of that is, it's all well and good. But my statement when I was at that AI event, I was like, so everybody is going to look to you for the monolithic AI, but we're going to have AIs. It's going to be, We're not going to be talking about the latest iteration of the AI coming out of the frontier labs. We're going to be talking about the latest iteration of my own home-based AI that I deploy locally. And lo and behold, OpenClaw, Clawdbot before, it is exactly that. Everybody's going to have their own AI, and not just one AI, but multiple AIs. Because I've got this DaVinci local AI that I'm going to use on my machine, and I also will have Clawdbot. I won't have it on the same box, but it'll be in my own network, my own resources, my own hardware, and I can take it offline if I want to. I can put it online if I want to. It's so this whole concept is. It's terrifying, but let's face it, it's going, I'm looking here at the company on this article. It's 1Password. And I did a lot of work in password management over the years and identity and access management. This is great because, and I don't know, I won't say the 1Password is going to be the be all end all in this case, because they're just one of many vendors that do access control. They do, identity and access management on an endpoint for password management. I suspect one of the players that is sleeping right now, sort of, but won't be potentially if they bring back one of their earlier products, is RoboForm. And RoboForm it's a very old product, but they had an offline product. You could put it on a thumb drive. You could totally operate with that thing offline and never have to be connected to have the back end synchronizing up to the servers. I still use it. I use it a lot. It's just one of the tools I've got. I spread out all my passwords, and I make sure I randomize them heavily, and I do my security checks frequently, which, by the way, MoltBook will probably help me do in the future, or an AI OpenClaw. But the security aspects of having something that can be offline, outside, and manage your encryption keys, your passwords, your tokens, all of the things that you need to have secured, that they can be localized and taken offline so that they're not exposed to the internet and they're not a risk directly is a big deal. So because 1Password is in that identity and access management piece, I'm glad to see that they're thinking about it, and they've put together some good thoughts around what they're doing here. I enjoyed that article, thought it was pretty good. And then here's my final topic, and then I'm going to be shutting it down here because I've gone half hour over my normal time. Well, I'm almost always about 15 to 20 minutes over. But the OpenClaw experiment is, this is Sophos. Now we're getting into one of the endpoint security companies taking a shot at what they think is appropriate for dealing with this. And they bring out one of the very first things, which is what I was saying about the MoltBook, where agents ask agents for help. We know what social engineering is, when somebody makes believe there's somebody else and they walk in and they get access to things they shouldn't. Like you walk in and say, hey, I'm the Maytag repair person. I'll take care of your washer and dryer. And then they come in and rob your house, right? That's social engineering in a nutshell. Well, imagine the next phase where you have AI-generated images, AI-generated audio, and you have people spoofing your kids and your parents and your family, trying to get you to give them money, right? We already see that out there. But now, what about bot-to-bot? Bot-to-bot social engineering is going to be a whole new level of warfare that's going to be just interesting to see. Maybe not interesting from a good standpoint, but we'll see. And we talked a minute ago about the checklists and the frameworks. I'm glad to see also that Google has a secure AI framework already set up. At least they're leaning into that. And ultimately, I think this will become part of one of their frameworks that they have. They've got a framework for cybersecurity that's pretty cool. So that's the end of my prepared content. By the way, that was Linux Mint on my laptop that I set up for the deployment of my Clawdbot. And everything going forward for me is going off of Windows and going on to Linux Mint and other Linux variants as time goes on. But buy the hardware that it's already installed on. So I'm kind of going with it. That's why I'm on Windows for the moment for most everything. So it is what it is. I'm not going to destroy a working system to throw Mint or throw Linux on it and then not be able to leverage the GPU or something like that. That's why I'm holding off on just flipping every device I have over to Linux, which I would do if I thought it was not going to totally hamper my productivity and what I do. All right, I think that's it for today. Give you one final second sip. I hope that you have a great, fantastic week. I'll be back every single day, Monday to Friday and Saturday and Sunday, 11 a.m. for the second sip. And if you come back, I will talk to you again tomorrow. Cheers, and I hope you have a great day.